My name is Delia Suriel. I am the author of The Thin Woman's Brain. Today I would like to discuss with you the 21-day program that we offer. The goal of the 21-day program is to establish freedom, reestablish a lifelong healthy relationship with food. It's not a matter of just losing weight. Losing weight, we've all done it many, many, many times. I've worked with over 1,500 women and they have all lost weight. Prior to coming to my program, they have all lost weight through a variety of methods. The issue is some of them have invested thousands of dollars in, after hard-fought efforts, Herculean efforts, they arrive at the promised land. They see that number on the scale. They have that size dress that they wanted. Yet, that is, within months, they regain all the weight because this neurological compulsive responses, reactions to food is still in their brain. It's still how they deal with life's ups and downs, with stress, with anxiety, with disappointment, with a variety of triggers in their lives. So our goal is to provide meaningful support from insightful coaches, and the program also includes 4 coaching sessions per week. It doesn't mean that you have to come to all 4 coaching sessions per week, but you have 4 opportunities every week to receive coaching. In addition, yes, the app is included. I know everybody just wants the app, but the app is a complement to a comprehensive program, because despite how extensive and how comprehensive our app is, it does not have 100% of what is needed. We still need the human support. We still need to problem solve. We still need to celebrate with others when we've achieved meaningful goals. So the goal is to have to encourage the hope and have measurable results. So every 21 days, we baseline in, we weigh ourselves and we measure again our progress using the key skills that are available to us. Okay, this is just a test, so let me just finish that. Okay, I'm also going to show you that a very important feature of our app, which the instructional video on this app, and that is that if you click on the Show More, okay, you scroll down, click on the Show More, you're going to see a variety of timelines that are available in this video, okay? So let's say that you watch the first 4 sessions on this video, and you don't have time to watch every single one of them. So at any time, you can just come back in and click on the specific portion of the video where you stopped last. Or let's say that, down the road, you just want to review something else, and you don't want to have to go through the entire video or spend a lot of time finding when that section is. It's all timestamped here. So this is, again, all you do to find the timestamps on the video is you scroll down, you click on Show More, you find the topic that you want to review, and you click on that timestamp, and it'll take you directly to that timestamp. Okay? So let's get started with the instructional video of the app.
Hello, my name is Delia Suriel. I am the author of The Thin Woman's Brain. We are now looking at the main dashboard of the app that is an important component of the Thin Woman's Brain program. The app has several elements, not only this main dashboard, but like all Ionix apps, as we swipe, we will see different menus and options. We're now looking at the Rewire Brain Hunger menu. I swiped again, and now we're looking at the Rewiring Tools menu. Swipe again, and we're looking at the Support menu. Swipe one more time, and we're looking at a pie chart of how the usage of the app has been used. In this case, very poorly, a lot of red slices. What we're shooting for is to see a lot of green slices to ensure that a rewiring process is in fact occurring. We swipe again, and we see a gauge of the daily. In this case, I've not used the app at all for today, and consequently my gauge is at red. That is very simple. I can swipe not only right, but I can also swipe left. And it will go ahead and display all the menus that we saw before, returning back again into the main menu. Welcome. My name is Delia Suriel, and I am the author of The Thin Woman's Brain. We're looking at the main menu from the app. The app is part of a comprehensive program that includes the assessments and coaching. It was not designed as a standalone product. It is a very valuable product, but just to reiterate, it is part of a comprehensive program. The app, I'm going to rotate the phone so we can just concentrate on the first 4 functions. The first 4 functions are the only functions that we have to do every day. There is a staggering amount of information and capabilities within this app, but when we start the process, just focus on these first 4 functions. First function is the cognitive alignment function. This is the function that is intended to be done every morning. I'll just open it for reference. I'm not going to enter any information. It is intended to use every morning to just get aligned cognitively as to the intentions of the day. We are going to read the prompts, enter the information, and then we save. Okay? Go back to the main menu. And the second function is the mindful moments. As we execute mindful moments during the day, we simply press the plus button and it will increase the counter. Mindful moment is when we have the ability to focus 100% of our attention to our breath, clear our minds, be present to the moment, and that allows that sense of well-being where we develop the ability to quiet the verbal center of the brain on a consistent basis throughout the day. The prep for mindful eating is a very critical function that we do prior to every meal. The ability to celebrate progress is critical to any rewiring process. If you're a perfectionist, please work with us and let us provide you additional resources. The issue is that perfectionists have a difficult time experiencing progress. To them, it's either a perfect experience or it doesn't count. And for this level of endeavor, which is a multiple week endeavor, it's critical to have the ability to experience progress every single day. So once again, to recap, these are the only 4 functions that are required every single day. The app has a lot of help and information. Every screen has at the bottom of it an eye, which has a great amount of information about the function and the intention of that screen. As you can see, there's a lot of verbiage about this one screen. It does look a lot smaller in a larger device, but in an iPhone, it obviously takes a lot of room. The app also, when you open any one of the functions, it contains information about what is supposed to be entered in that function. So in addition to the eye, the information icon, we also have a question mark, which is what am I supposed to enter if I have any questions about what to enter specifically on this screen. Okay? If I rotate the screen right now, you'll see that it says help, and it's help for the mindful eating function specifically. I'm going to rotate back to landscape. When there is a red dot, a red asterisk by any one of the entry elements, it means that element is required. And in some instances, there is a blue question mark, and that means that if you have additional questions about that specific entry, you can press on that blue question mark by the entry, and it will tell you more information as to the intent of that entry. Let me go back. In addition, all the screens have a support at the bottom of it. So if at any time you need support from the staff, from the TWB staff, the Thin Woman's Brain staff, you just press on that support and it will open an additional screen where you can key in what type of support you are in need of. I need help with X. You then save that. Now we'll sync the app with the central server, which will let us know, it generates a report for us and lets us know that a specific user, you as a very specific user, has requested support. In the app, there's a variety of icons beyond the ones found here. And all the icons are explained in this function called Terms and Icons. It's found in the support menu. So the first part of this screen is definitions of the terms that we use throughout the app. At the bottom of this function, we see all the icons that are used primarily in the dashboard. The check mark, as I explained before, it indicates that the function has been executed. The up arrow, the up red arrow indicates that we didn't honor the palate change and we ate additional bites beyond the palate change. The green arrow down indicates that we did honor the palate change and consequently we are releasing the extra weight. The neutral sign indicates that we might have eaten 1, 2, 3 more bites after the palate change, so more than likely we are maintaining our current weight. The red X indicates that we've missed one of our daily objectives. For example, the app will display this red X if we've not registered a meal by 10:30 in the morning or the second meal by 6 p.m. The orange question mark is, again, that's the default icon that's displayed with the app. The I at the bottom of the screen is found on every screen and displays additional information about the intent of that specific function. If we need help as to what exactly are we to enter in each one of these fields, then the question mark is for that purpose. As I explained before, the sync is what we use to manually back up our data. It also downloads data to your app. For example, a calendar, or if there's any changes to the prompts, that's how the information is downloaded for our central service. And the setting is what opens your profile page and allows you to customize the app to your own needs. When you first installed the app, one of the things that came up was your personal settings, your profile. And this profile, hopefully you completed the first time through with the app. But as things change, as your accomplishments change, as your ability to be more discerning about your triggers, increase your mindfulness, acquire the ability to breathe between bites with ease, then those accomplishments should be noted. Again, without a sense of accomplishment, a sense of progress, the rewiring doesn't occur. It doesn't matter what skill set you're working on. Your top 3 triggers will also evolve over time. What interrupts those triggers, obviously, is the triggers change, and what interrupts those triggers will change also. Your source of happiness, the EDSO, the master neurotransmitters, what activities influence the generation of those endorphins, dopamines, oxytocin, and serotonins. Your tribe, who are the people who are truly emotionally supported for you? I have friends who are great problem solvers, but they are not, I have found over time that they're perhaps not the best people to call when I need emotional support. So as we discern that, we change those profiles. The stress sources also change, especially as you increase your mindfulness. Less things stress you out, or different things stress you out. The life skills that you're working on, perhaps you master the first life skill that you initially were working on, and it's time now to focus on a second life skill. Your personal MiniGoals, of what are the things that are still triggered for you, and the support level, what kind of level of accountability you would like. So anyway, this screen is to update these settings, that your personal settings in the app. And they're accessed again very nicely from the setting wheels, which is in the lower right-hand side of all the menu screens. Hope this was helpful to you. As you can see from the dashboard, from the main dashboard, there's several symbols here. Let me explain the icons, okay? By each function, when the day begins, there will be a yellow question mark. That indicates that that function has not been executed. As we execute each function, then that question mark turns into a green check mark. I'll show you that. I'm going to invoke the cognitive alignment, and I'm just going to fill in the information just so we see that icon change it. I'm just going to select the word test like that. Okay, when it returns to the tracker, to the daily tracker, you can see that there's a check mark by it. The number of question marks, the yellow question marks, indicates the number of times that this function should be executed during the day. So most of us have 3 meals a day, so there's 3 prep for mindful eating. There's 1 question mark that celebrate progress. That means that at least once a day we should be celebrating progress. At the bottom of this tracker, we see a couple of the symbols. The recycle-like symbol on the lower left-hand side of the dashboard, of this dashboard, is a sync function. That is what downloads data. For example, a calendar, if any changes have been made to the support calendar, that data is downloaded to your phone and your data is backed up in case you lose your phone or the phone gets lost or whatever. And in the middle of that screen, there is an I, and that stands for information. And that will give you an overview of this specific content of this release. Every screen in the app has that I at the bottom of the screen. The wheel, the settings, then is for you to set your specific preferences, your specific profile. Your first name is very important, what accomplishments you've done so far, what are your overeating triggers. Right now I've just populated with a test. What interrupts these triggers, what are your sources of happiness, what is basically what generates dopamine for you, who are the people in your life who provide support, emotional support, and are there for you to celebrate life, what are your stress sources, what life skill are you working on, MiniGoals, support level. So that little wheel, that setting icon is throughout the app. We are now looking at the main dashboard of the app. I need to emphasize that there are over 35 functions in this app. Like a toolbox of a mechanic, these functions were not meant to be executed every day. Otherwise, you would do the entire day's use the app. The intent is to use the first 4 icons in this app on a daily basis. Okay, I'm going to rotate the app so you can just see. It's just these first functions are the only functions that are required to be used every day. So the first one we're going to be discussing today in detail is cognitive alignment. We simply open that function by pressing the greater than sign, and it displays same icon. It's currently informing me that I am on day 14 of my program. This function should be executed as early in the morning as possible. We're going to bring cognitive awareness to the rewiring process. So the first thing is to commit that this is a release day, that I'm ready to release not only the extra weight, but the all neurological reactions that I have to food. I will leverage the prep for eating. That is a very critical function to be used prior to eating any meals. I will also record the quality of my eating, whatever I eat. That will allow us to see a pattern to your eating behavior. I am cognitive of and accepting of my top 3 triggers. These are the triggers that you entered during your profile. I'm committed to using this app to rewire my responses to any of these triggers. There are over 8 distinct functions in this app to help you respond to the current triggers. In addition, we have coaching sessions that you can schedule with this app, and that's done by just clicking, and that's done by just pressing on that link which opens the calendar. Now the next question is very important. Can you visualize yourself at your ideal weight? What we're looking for here is a visceral response to that visualization. If there's any blockage to that visualization, then the human mind needs to be congruent between the goals and the action. If there's no congruency, we find a way to self-sabotage. So it's very important to have that ability to visualize and that generates a visceral response within you. So we record here our reaction, our response to that visualization. And the last check is to really be that you have all the support, the tenacity, the tools, and the intelligence to succeed in this program. If you have any issue with any one of these prompts, then please attend one of the coaching sessions. Now, the last guidance that I have to give you is that if you just do this cognitive alignment, and all you do is open the app and just do click, 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 click. You're missing the point of this function. The function is to gain an awareness and a cognitive alignment with these intentions. If you do this as a to-do in the morning, if you execute these functions as merely a to-do in the morning, you're missing the point. You really have to take a full minute to really be with these concepts. Ideally, a few minutes in the morning. From there, you save it and it returns you to the tracker menu. We're now going to discuss the mindful moments, which is the next entry in the tracker. A mindful moment is the ability to be fully in parasympathetic mode. 99.9% of all the overeating responses are sympathetic nature. They're compulsive in nature, which is what the sympathetic system was meant to be. It was meant to get us out of danger. It was meant to keep us safe. So all reactions which are compulsive in nature are sympathetic. When we have the ability to quiet the verbal center of the brain, to focus 100% on our breath, and do so at a very low level of anxiety, then we are in parasympathetic mode, and we can record by simply pressing on the plus sign that we have just taken a mindful moment. The reason we take these mindful moments throughout the day is that we want to learn how to live in parasympathetic mode most of our time. And that will then rewire our brain into not reacting to food compulsively. The next function is prep for mindful eating. The ability to release the extra weight is highly predicated on using this function. So simply, like all functions, we just press that line and it opens the prep for mindful eating function. Now, there's a timer here because we're encouraged to spend at least 1 minute, again, being fully aligned with our vision, being in parasympathetic mode before eating the meal. So the one thing that allows us to short circuit the addictive reaction is the ability to breathe between bites. So the commitment here is to have that intention to be fully aligned with not eating, not taking a breath between bites. So I check that. The next is that I make a commitment that if I experience any anxiety, if I watch my anxiety level increase, which will happen to people at the highest level of food addiction when they're not using food to calm themselves, their anxiety level will go up. So if that happens, the commitment is just to stop eating and breathe and really do deep belly breaths where we are activating the vagus nerve, which is the nerve that allows us to return to parasympathetic mode until we feel calm again. Now, before we start eating, we have to anticipate the seduction that happens once we begin to experience all the dopamine from the food and the palate changes. At that point, the intention of this specific function is to be aware that once the palate change, the desire to continue experiencing dopamine is pretty high, and we just have to recognize it. When you finish the meal, when you honor the palate change, it's important to just write down, I am nourished, just to connect and develop an alternative neurology that is not, I am bloated, I've eaten everything beyond my physical capacity, I cleaned my plate, all that dysfunctional beliefs have to be eradicated, and now we're going to support sustaining our body. So we're going to check this function also. If you're eating with others, then there's a lot of information here in the information tab about eating with others and how to prep for that, because it's very different from eating by yourself or eating with a spouse. Okay? All right, so we're ready, and at that point, we just press the next. This brings us to the breath function, and the breath function is what we're going to utilize to make sure that we take a breath between bites. If you can see right at the top of the function is another button that says Talk to Addy, and that function we use when we have any difficulty honoring the palate change. Okay, so basically this function is just a matter of eating a bite, taking a breath, and reading the prompts on the breath. It's very helpful. Enjoying a bite, reading the prompts, and checking it off. It's very important that we milk as much dopamine out of every bite. We're cognitive to every bite, so all these prompts are encouraging us to do that. We continue the process. We're putting the fork down. We're focusing 100% of our attention to the food. We're truly enjoying. We're noticing the texture, etc. And we take a breath between bites. Once we are finished and we experience that palate change, if we're having any difficulty experiencing that palate change, we scroll up and we click on this button that says Talk to Addy. This next function is called Talk to Addy, and it is the function that we utilize when we experience a palate change and we're having any difficulties honoring the palate change. The first feature of this function is the clock, and it is encouraging us to exceed the last time we used this function. Okay, so if the last time we used this function was 30 seconds, just strive to go to 31 seconds during this process. Okay. Now, we call the voice that is the food seduction, the one that encourages us to keep eating, even though physiologically we don't need additional nourishment, call her Addy. So we're going to have a dialogue. So this function is very easy. All we do is we read the prompts and respond genuinely to this prompt. So we enter the information. How am I feeling? That located in your body, the exact location where that sensation is being experienced. It could be, I feel helpless, or I feel encouraged that I'm not just eating mindlessly. We read the prompt, we answer the question in the prompt. Okay? It's simply done. If you need more help, there is support at the bottom of the screen. There is also a question mark by the prompts in case you need additional information. You simply click Next. Mindful eating screen is really a post-mortem of the eating experience. It is what we record to keep a history of how we did during the meals. Then this is then used to graphically depict what would be helpful to you in terms of patterns of whatever areas of difficulties you're having. And through the support, the coaching sessions, we can address whatever is difficult for you. Okay? So, what was my level of enthusiasm about repeating this behavior? If it was low, then I can select a low number. If it's high, just click on the bar and it'll reflect a high number. If I chose foods where there were no added sweeteners, flavor enhancers, I can then select a high number. If I sat down and focused on that meal, I can select a high number. If I chewed on my bite slowly, I can select a high number. If not, it's kind of like 50%, then I can select a middle number. If I took breath between bites, again, I can select a high number. If it was half and half, then select a number that reflects that. If I experience pleasure, then we can select a number. Now, the next problem is asking us to be brutally honest and select what happened after your palate change. And there's three choices. I either honor the palate change, I took a few bites after the palate change, or I'll rate. Okay? So I'm going to say that I honor the palate change. And now we're just going to end, and we're going to physically type in, I am nourished. This will allow us to have a cognitive awareness that the physical body has been satisfied. Okay? And that if I experience any brain hunger after this, then I can address that. Okay, after I select the palate change, without judgment or self-admonishment, I will enter the number of bites that I overate. I'm going to enter 0 because I want to celebrate that, number one. And number two, because I did honor the palate change. So that's great. So at this point, all the entries have been made, and I can press save, and that information is saved. As you can see now, there is an X by the prep for mindful eating because I didn't use that function until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which means I didn't use the app until later on in the afternoon. By the meal, I have a down arrow because I honor the palate change. So the app is telling me that I ate in a manner that allows me to lose weight, to release the extra weight my body's carrying. Hi, Delia Surreal again. And this time we are continuing our instructional video on the Thin Woman's Brain for the iOS, for the iPhone and iPad devices. Next function we're going to discuss is Celebrate Progress. We open the function, simply pressing on it. At this point, we are going to review our list of accomplishments so far, which we can key in our profile, and we should update as frequently as possible. We are reminded that genuine gratitude catalyzes the rewiring process. We're also reminded that there are 3 personality types for which experiencing progress is very difficult. That's the perfectionist personality, cynic personality, or anyone with low self-acceptance. So if you fall under any of these categories, please join me during one of my coaching sessions, which you can schedule via the calendar, and let's discuss how to eradicate these dysfunctional beliefs that don't allow you to experience progress. This is the reason why this function is so critical, is that any time we don't have a sense of accomplishment, a sense of progress, in any endeavor, not just rewiring for a healthy relationship with food, but in any endeavor, the human condition is one where we stop pursuing that endeavor. And it's very normal. It's very healthy, actually. I've been taking basket weaving classes for 6 months. The baskets look horrible. I don't have a sense of accomplishment. I don't feel I'm making any progress. Perhaps I need a different teacher. Perhaps I need to find another hobby. This is very critical. Without the sense of progress, people give up the endeavor. Okay, so if you're not experiencing progress, you're going to give up the rewiring process. Okay, this function is very simple. All we have to do is on a daily basis is really record that one of these experiences. How am I feeling? Am I able to learn from my triggers? And despite setbacks, I'm making progress. I'm extremely disappointed with my progress. I'm ready to give up. I'm making tremendous progress. I'm not experiencing a sense of progress due to setbacks. What is it? I'm unhappy with my progress. How are you feeling? Ideally, I'm making tremendous progress, or despite setbacks, I am making progress. I have a sense from that. I'm able to learn from my triggers. That's the ideal situation. But don't get discouraged if, in fact, you're feeling very discouraged. Just acknowledge that and seek coaching, which is part of your investment in this program, so that we can get back on track. So that's the end of experiencing progress, experiencing gratitude. We simply save that information, and it takes us back to our tracker. The next function we're going to discuss in our instructional video is the gauge and pie chart. We simply access those by swiping to the right. We see now it tells us the date that this gauge is reflected and the different values in that. All the information regarding the different values and how to obtain that is simply by opening the information panel associated with this gauge. Okay? As we increase the activities and the required activities that we need to fulfill the rewiring process, it's different numbers for that. Please note, in terms of the checking in schedule, scheduling support, if you don't cancel that explicitly, there's a penalty. If you schedule yourself for support and you don't cancel it, then we are expecting you in that support call. And obviously, we do need to know, for example, if there's a day that no one's going to come and you forget to cancel, then we are going to invest our time into that online call. So it's important to cancel those calls, okay? Cancel the scheduling of your participation. All right. All right. The next, as we use the app, obviously the gauge will increase that value. The next graphics that we're looking at is the 21-day graphics, and it tells us how we're doing each day that we are. It's still early in the morning. I haven't used the app, so that's why the slide pie for today, it's reflecting red. Again, like the gauge, there's a lot of information as to what these values, different values mean. So one of the things we are trying to achieve is to live our lives primarily in parasympathetic mode, in a cognitive awareness, not a sympathetic response, which is compulsive in nature. One of the most powerful tools to achieve a high percentage of parasympathetic responses is meditation. There are other forms of mindfulness, but on the sixth icon here of the tracker, we see the meditation function. Again, if meditation is very difficult for you to do, please join us in one of our support calls and we'll discuss alternative methods for you. But ideally, the meditation practice is one of the most powerful ways to neurologically live primarily in a parasympathetic response. In this function, I have a goal for today of 12 minutes. I've already done 15. Let's say that I was able to do an additional 5. So I just key it in. And I key in the quality of that meditation. Let's say it was peaceful. But if it was frazzle or concern or worrying, you key that in so that we have a track record of what your meditation process is. And then we simply save that. Because I did 15 minutes prior and 5 minutes, I'm now seeing in the daily tracker that my total for today of meditation or mindfulness practice is 20 minutes. We continue now with our instructional video for the iOS version of the Thin Woman's Brain app. The next function we're going to discuss is the calendar, the support calendar. That we simply, like all the functions, we simply press on that and it will open the calendar itself. The calendar is color coded and it has two distinctions. One is scheduled events are shown in green. Available events where support is going to be provided are displayed in blue. It's very simple. We schedule our participation by simply pressing on the events. So if I press on a blue event, it turns on green, meaning that I'm going to be attending that event. If there's a green event that I cannot attend, something that I've scheduled myself and I can no longer attend, I simply press it again and it turns to blue. If you've never called in, all the instructions are always found in the instruction portion, the information portion of the coaching calendar. We are displaying the North America, United Kingdom, and Australia, New Zealand numbers. However, if you are calling from a country not in this list, simply press this link, which will show you for all the international numbers that the service start meeting that we use provides a calling number for. If your country is not one of the countries where there's a local phone number, then you can use what is called a voice over IP phone. It's also called a Skype phone. The second link is what is used to connect to that conference call, okay, using a voice over IP number. If you're calling for the first time, please plan for 3 to 5 minutes for the first time you call so you can get the hang of it and you're comfortable with it. So once you have your instructions, you can come back to the instructions at any time. You schedule yourself, you cancel whatever event you don't want to participate, you simply save. At this point, you'll see the sync wheel going through, and what's going on is that the data is being sent to our central server, so we know that you're going to be participating in the support. Okay, so that is the function, the calendar function. It's pretty easy to use. Hope to see you in a support call very soon. Next function we're going to discuss is the EDSOmeter. Simply, like all function, we press on it and it opens the function itself. EDSO stands for endorphin, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. I'm going to open the information screen for this function and describe what these functions are. The feel-good neurotransmitters. When do we generate dopamine? When do we generate serotonin? When do we generate oxytocin? Additionally, if you want to know the activities that you typically generate dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, you can also use the help, and it gives you a number of activities that generate these very critical neurotransmitters naturally. The importance of this function is that when we invest in activities that naturally generate these neurotransmitters for us, then the need to experience dopamine, to experience pleasure, the need to generate dopamine to experience pleasure through the food is highly minimized. Think back in your own life. When you are engaged, when you're having fun, when you are in purpose, when you are present to your life, to your projects, when you're enthused about your projects, these are not the times when you experience brain hunger. So an investment in these activities then is part of the new life that we're rewiring, where we're going to be generating these feel-good neurotransmitters naturally by investing in these activities. So here, all we do is we key in the activities that I'm going to do today that are going to generate any one of these neurotransmitters. That's it. We just enter that and we save it. And that's very simple usage of endorphins. And so activities for today. The next function we're going to be discussing is Rewire Brain Hunger. Simply press on that line and it opens the entire menu. This is a very extensive menu to be used when you either are not sure if you're experiencing the hunger is strictly brain hunger or physical hunger, or you need to interrupt the brain hunger. You cognitively understand and know that your physical body doesn't need nourishment, but you still have an overwhelming desire to eat. This menu, like all screens in this app, has an information content which can be used to get familiarized with this specific set of functions. It starts with the hunger type. Hunger type is what we utilize whenever we're not sure if we are experiencing brain hunger. We key in the number of hours prior to when we ate last. If I want to say 2.5 hours, I use the decimal point, 2.5 hours. Then I answer the questions. Is my stomach growling? No. Is my blood sugar level low? If I'm not sure what blood sugar level question is, I just press the question mark by it. Then it'll tell me, is your energy level tanking or is your ability to concentrate fading? Are you craving very specific foods? Yes, I want chocolate. Are you salivating in anticipation of that taste of that food? Yes. If you're going to eat or overeat, are you going to set aside time to do it mindfully? I'm not going to check that. So what's the intensity of my hunger? Maybe the intensity of my hunger is very low. And then I just press the next button. And this is the first function in the Rewiring Brain Hunger. The second function in the Rewiring Brain Hunger is the Interrupt Addy. And this also is a full, rich set of tools. You're seeing the EMDR tool, which is the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing tool. EFT, which is Emotional Freedom Technique, journaling. NLP, which stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. If you are completely overwhelmed by the desire to overeat, this is a very critical function. It allows us to overeat in a managed fashion so that we are not strictly eating mindlessly. We are at least being very cognitive that our physical body doesn't need food, but we are overwhelmed by the power of the addictive responses, okay? And the compassionate self-acceptance, which is where we want to get to whenever we are experiencing brain hunger and we're able to observe that desire without acting on it. This menu, as all the other content in the app, has a lot of information as to what these tools are, what is the EMDR, what is CFT, what is journaling, overwhelm, and when to use these functions. Okay.
The first item on the Interrupt Addy menu is EMDR. When the brain switches to sympathetic mode, reactions are compulsive. This function is called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and it is a very effective tool to interrupt brain hunger. We have found EMDR tremendously effective, especially when you're experiencing high anxiety, which left unchecked leads to a compulsive reaction to food. Food is what we use in an attempt to calm ourselves down. EMDR helps us to neurologically exit sympathetic reactions and restore parasympathetic responses. We know that when a person is very upset, their brain cannot process information as it does ordinarily. So how we use this function is that we merely follow the blinking light. Our head stationary in our eyes. Both of our eyes are following the blinking light. All our awareness are on the blinking light. We have learned that for many people, while obsessing about food, their eyes focus on the upper quadrant of their dominant side, which means that if you're right-handed, your eyes will gravitate towards the upper right quadrant. For left-handed people, then it will gravitate towards the upper left quadrant. The mere act of shifting your eyes through a wide visual field allows the person to snap out of the food fantasy. We know that if the food fantasy is like a snowball going down the hill, if left unchecked, it just gets more persuasive, more seductive, more powerful. In fact, the brain starts generating dopamine just on the anticipation of activating the pleasure center. This is EMDR process allows the person to regain cognitive awareness before the brain hunger turns into a compulsive reaction to food. We know that the hunger has zero physical basis. Your body doesn't need the extra nourishment. So this is a very powerful technique to exit and interrupt the brain hunger. We are now looking at the EFT function. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. In this function, we simply follow the blinking star and tap with a medium amount of pressure on that point while we're repeating this statement. Even though I'm experiencing overwhelming brain hunger, I deeply and completely accept myself. We keep following the star. Right now it's between the eyebrows. We keep tapping with medium pressure and repeating this statement on the left-hand side of the screen. Even though I am experiencing overwhelming brain hunger, I deeply and completely accept myself. If you're using this in a small device, rotate the device landscape so you can see the picture in a wider screen. Emotional freedom technique, also known as EFT tapping, is an effective interrupt tool, especially for individuals who are highly kinesthetic. It is based on the premise, documented by the Chinese approximately 5,000 years ago, about a complex system of energy, the meridian system. It is a concept still used today in traditional Chinese medicine about a path through which the life force, also known as qi, and it forms the basis for modern day acupressure and a wide variety of other healing techniques. So we keep following the star. The star will cycle through several times to give you the opportunity to exit sympathetic mode, which was intended to mobilize the body to face an external threat, and arrive and restore the parasympathetic mode. While we're in sympathetic mode, most of our resources get diverted to the large muscles, the muscles necessary to avert an attack or to flee from an attacker. Your adrenaline increases drastically, your muscles tense, your blood pressure and heart rate and blood sugar all rise to give you the extra energy to meet that fight or flee from a threat. We keep tapping this right now. The image is on the chin. We're tapping on the chin and repeating with true compassion, with true acceptance. Even though I'm experiencing overwhelming brain hunger, I deeply and completely accept myself. Most of the fight or flight response, most of the activation today of the sympathetic system are triggered by mental visualization. This generates an elevated sense of stress. And it's typically triggered by either a negative memory or an anticipation of future event that we find highly undesirable. The stress response doesn't know the difference between real and imaginary. But this technique is tremendously effective as it allows us to end the sympathetic neurological reactions. And because of the acceptance that we are expressing, it allows us to generate the necessary oxytocin so that the brain can restore the parasympathetic mode. I hope you find this technique as effective and as helpful to interrupt brain hunger as thousands of people have.
The third function in the interrupt menu, the interrupt Addy menu, is journaling. Most of us who have experienced overeating, compulsive overeating, will tell you that most of us who have experienced compulsive overeating have a history of using food whenever we have an emotional imbalance, whenever we experience something that we haven't developed, for which we haven't developed a life skill to deal with that situation. So what we're going to do first is to leverage the breath to switch our neurological system from sympathetic compulsive reactions to parasympathetic cognitive responses. The first step is to leverage the breath to switch, to exit the sympathetic mode. By taking deep belly breath, that allows the anxiety to subside and for us to gain awareness of what is going on for us and the fact that we don't need the physical nourishment. So we're going to acknowledge, how do we feel physically? We're going to key in that information here. Does your body need nourishment? Just be with that fact. Just be with the fact that your body doesn't need the nourishment. What is it that you hope to experience emotionally with the food? Just name, I just want to experience pleasure. I'm compelled to experience that pleasure. Now, the next question is the critical question. What do I need genuinely? And I will name that real need. Is my anxiety level high? Am I frustrated? Am I disappointed? Am I lonely? What is it that you're experiencing? The next question is one that sometimes is very challenging at the beginning. What activities, people, resources would meet that real need? And in some instances, some of us don't know what that is. And we have to have the courage to say, I don't know. The next step is to accept our humanity and have the willingness to be with our disappointment, our loneliness, whatever emotion is it that we are attempting to suppress by the overeating. And to have the courage to say, I will no longer attempt to run away from the anticipated pain of my feelings. The recognition that the brain is generating dopamine just in anticipation of the pleasure of the food. But it's a lie. Or we're going to feel pleasure for a few seconds, for a few minutes, and then at the end we're going to feel ashamed. But we have to acknowledge the seduction of the food. And finally, we just have to have the courage to lean into those feelings. As you read these prompts, just journal what's coming up for you. If this journaling process is not lowering your anxiety and alleviating the need, then we have to have the courage to then contact one of the members of our supportive community. These names we key in our profile screen, also known as the settings. And if we are not able to reach those people real time, then text them, email them, but reach out. That will generate the necessary oxytocin to calm the amygdala and exit sympathetic reactions. The last step is to celebrate this very important progress of utilizing this function and being with your emotions. As you repeat this function, you will find a transformational experience in responding to your emotional needs in a very nurturing fashion. The fifth function in the interrupt Addy, the interrupt, the seduction, interrupt brain hunger, is overwhelm. This is a function that we're going to utilize when the power and intensity of the brain hunger is such that even though we have all these tools available to us, even after we try some of the interrupt tools, we are compelled to overeat. This is going to happen when we are in sympathetic mode, and even though we're watching ourselves and we recognize our physical body is not in need of nourishment, the addiction reaction is that powerful, is that intense. All right, so what we're going to do is strive to exceed the last time we used this function, the best observation time for this function. Okay, we are going to start by acknowledging that despite having no physical hunger, you feel helpless, seduced, completely overpowered. It's okay. That cognitive awareness is part of the rewiring process. We're going to leverage the breath to return to parasympathetic mode. The reason why we feel overwhelmed is because we are in sympathetic mode. Once we are in sympathetic mode, their reactions are compulsive. That's why it's called compulsive overeating. All right? So just leverage the breath to return to parasympathetic mode. We're going to choose something healthy to overeat. My physical body is not in need of nourishment. I am going to overeat, driven by the current intensity of my response to food, and I'm going to do that as consciously as possible. The first step is one of the means of measuring that is we're going to choose something healthy. Okay? The next step is to just make a commitment to overeat that snack mindfully, to overeat the food mindfully. Now, we're going to be cognitive on how much we're compelled to overeat. So we're going to specify the portion that we're going to overeat. Am I going to have a snack, a full meal, supersized meal, 5 to 6 servings, or half of the refrigerator? This is where we're going to have a lot of self-acceptance of the strength of the addictive response, the compulsive response. And we're just going to select, ideally, a snack. But if you know yourself that you're going to have a full meal, then just select that. When you finish overeating, then you're going to now track what did you actually eat. What was the size of the meal that you actually ate? And you're going to as gently and compassionate as you can, record your feelings about being overwhelmed by your food addiction, by your compulsive reactions. And even though you overate, if you did so in a mindful manner, in a controlled manner, control yourself, okay? Even though you have overeaten, you did that so in a mindful manner, so congratulate yourself. This is the emerging ability to be mindful and to eat in a parasympathetic mode, not a sympathetic mode. So this is an emerging skill. Congratulate yourself from being here. We continue now with our instructional video of the iOS app. The next function we are going to be discussing is the compassionate self-acceptance. So I'm going to open that function. And this function is very critical because this is where the true rewiring occurs, is the ability to observe the brain hunger and yet not be compelled to act on it. So we have an awareness. One analogy that I use is like having a desire to scratch a healing wound where you know that the desire is there, yet cognitively you recognize and you have the ability to accept that scratching that wound is in fact not to your best interest and it's going to make things worse. So when we reach that ability to experience compassionate self-acceptance of what's going on, we've gained a tremendous ability. And here's the function to record that. I'm going to rotate the phone for a second so you can see the full title. It's a small device and obviously it's truncating the actual title. Okay, so the first thing in this function is a timer that indicates how long we're holding that desire cognitively, the desire to experience pleasure via the dopamine of the food that the food stimulates, and yet not be compelled to act on it. So neurologically, it's reaching the ability to be with the desire of brain hunger and cognitively recognize this is not a need. This is my own neurology. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to stay in parasympathetic mode, and by taking 3 deep breaths, that will allow us to further observe the brain hunger. The breath is again the most effective tool to stay in parasympathetic mode. 3 belly deep breaths, okay? Now, we might lack the necessary modalities, life skills to meet the real need. But this is the function where we can journal about that. This is the function where we can be with that desire to overeat in the absence of needing to nourish our bodies. So we have to keep exploring what the real need is. The food is an attempt to meet that need. So at the bottom is an entry point. So I am going to enter the data that I need to enter to reflect the prompts above. Okay, so, and we're going to do so mindfully. We're going to do so with a lot of gratitude that we've achieved this amazing ability, and that's the point of this function. The next function we're going to be discussing is I Want Dopamine, which is the third step in the Rewiring brain hunger protocol. Very important function. Currently, we are experiencing the desire to get a squirt of dopamine to stimulate the pleasure center whenever we have not learned, because we have not learned how to meet the real need. So the first feature of this function is the clock, once again, to keep track and to encourage us to go past whatever the best observation time was the last time we used this function. I have not used this function right now, so it's showing it 0, 0. Okay. There are 3 reasons why we want dopamine. We simply might need dopamine. We simply might need one of those amazing neurotransmitters that generate a sense of well-being for a human being. Number 1, our physical body was not meant to be sitting for hours upon hours upon hours at the modern lifestyle, part of the modern lifestyle. We were not meant to be sitting hours upon hours. That is the feature of the modern quote-unquote lifestyle. If you've been sitting for more than 90 minutes and you experience brain hunger, more than likely you just need to move. Music is a great way, specific music I should say, is a great way of generating some dopamine, and I would encourage everyone to create their own personal playlist of upbeat, high energy music. Gratitude, kindness. It's amazing that some people just don't understand. This is not a new age concept. The brain actually generates dopamine whenever we express gratitude, whenever we're kind to another human being, even to a pet. Humor. Humor is a great source of dopamine. Sitting in nature and just being in touch with nature. Pets or human connection. Daydreaming. Just a mental break. Just what is it that I need? My body is currently conditioned to want dopamine. Instead, we're going to really address what is the need. And typically, all we need is to look at this list and recognize what it is that we need. If there's a lot of other information in this panel, a lot of other suggestions in the entry in the help area. So if you're not sure, these resources are available to you. The second reason why we typically experience brain hunger is our inability to process a difficult emotion. And we have to learn, many of us were trained to avoid certain things, confrontation, communicating with difficult people, expressing the inability to help, or when there's a request, or things of that nature. That creates a lot of anxiety within us. And we're trying to avoid that feeling by generating a little bit of dopamine with food. So part of it is just name how are you feeling. Just name that function. I am disappointment. Disappointment is a big function in terms of an unwillingness to experience and to name that emotion. The third category of why we want dopamine is triggered by a deficiency in one of the critical life skills. The life skills, we have an assessment on our website to measure any deficiencies or strengths. Very important to also measure strengths, because that's what we have to leverage until we fill the gap on any one of the deficiencies. So if we have a deficiency, let's say we have a deficiency in refusal skills, and someone makes a very unreasonable request, a request that's going to jeopardize our ability to self-care, then we can question. I have tremendous difficulties turning down a request made by a friend, family member, coworker, and understanding that that difficulty that we experience when we have to turn people down creates a lot of anxiety within us. And typically we're trying to mitigate that anxiety with the food. I would encourage you very strongly to join me and discuss your own personal life skills during a coaching session, because there's a lot to this process. And again, there's a very high correlation when people have deficiency in one of these critical life skills and experiencing the brain hunger. All right, the last step in this process is if you have the last two steps in this process. If you have any difficulties identifying this trigger, let us know, okay? And we can help you. And the last entry is very critical. We need to identify the events, situations, or people that recurrently trigger us. The last entry is very important. This is where we describe the events, situations, or people that trigger us, because we need to build a history. We have to recognize the pattern so we can break that pattern. So the next time we interact with this very difficult person, we do have a nurturing response to that, dealing with that difficult person. The next time a specific event or situation happens, we have the ability to deal with that and address those needs instead of overeating. This is where we built that history, so that entry. So a very important function. I want dopamine. This is where we're going to learn to meet the real need. This is the function that's going to teach us and help us in meeting that real need. Once you've completed the 4 steps of the Rewire Brain Hunger menu, you see that the last function is gratitude, the ability to experience progress. So today we're going to be discussing this specific function. And once you complete, you've named brain hunger, you either use one of the interrupt tools or you have reached the ability to compassionately observe the brain hunger. You've named the real need. You're developing the ability to meet that real need. Then the last step of the protocol is to experience gratitude, to experience progress. The inability to experience progress is the number one reason people don't finish their rewiring. They don't have that sense that they're making progress. Once again, let me reiterate that if you have a perfectionist, cynic, or low acceptance personality, you will have tremendous challenge into experiencing that sense of progress, even if you have to use the interrupt tools, several of the interrupt tools, because of the brain hunger is very powerful. Even if you don't know, have you not yet learned how to meet that real need that is masking itself as brain hunger. So the importance of this function is to recognize and to experience. I'm able to learn from my triggers. I am making progress despite setbacks. I'm making tremendous progress. Or to acknowledge the disappointment that you're experiencing. If you're ready to give up, ask for help. Ask for help. That's why the program includes coaching. It's not just a piece of machinery where you enter data. when we interact with others that are in the same journey, when we receive coaching, we generate the necessary oxytocin to complete the rewiring. It's the lubrication to the rewiring. Imagine a car engine without oil. Even if it has all the hydraulic fluids and all the essential fluids up to specification, has gas and everything's working perfectly, without the oil, the car can't move forward. So this is a very important process. So ideally, you feel like you have to experience that at a visceral level, that you're making progress. Otherwise, the rewiring process cannot happen. If you need to schedule support, you can just press on the link here and open the support calendar. Or if you want to ask specifically for explicit support, the last box is the entry point where you can enter that information. If you do enter anything in this box, it will automatically sync with our central server. If you don't have internet access when you save that, then please remember to sync your app manually the next time you gain internet access. So this is the last step of the protocol when you are rewiring the brain hunger. Specifically, we have to develop a different response to the brain hunger. We have to accept it as the barometer that our bodies, our neurology is asking for one of those critical neurotransmitters. We're now looking at the Rewiring Tools menu. We have a specific set of functions that are to rewire the brain hunger, but in addition to that, we have more specialized tools to rewire these specific circumstances. First one is Red Alert, and this is a function that we are going to utilize whenever we don't know where to go in the app. We're just experiencing overwhelming brain hunger and we simply don't know where to go in the app. So first thing is leverage the breath. One more time, closed mouth, deep belly breaths until you feel your anxiety level start to subside. You have to move from parasympathetic responses, from compulsive reactions to parasympathetic responses. The breath is the course of action, most powerful means of restoring the parasympathetic mode, which should be our primary home, neurological home, should be our neurological home. So by taking deep, slow, closed mouth breaths, we activate the vagus nerve. We are able to restore parasympathetic mode. Second step, that is just to remind yourself and to be with what's going on neurologically. Your brain wants dopamine. This is the correlation. This is the neural net that is dominant whenever you're experiencing anxiety, stress, or whatever. So just acknowledge that. Have a cognitive that. Say out loud, I am willing to eradicate the belief that overeating is going to make me feel better, because there is a belief underlying this neurology. Okay, now, depending on if you're feeling stressed out, frustrated, bored, only disconnected from others, this is the tool. We have 4 distinct recordings to address that. These were recorded by Jade Dudley in UK. She is a very gifted psychotherapist and a master hypnotherapist. And these are very helpful in terms of addressing that. If you need additional information, like all menus, we do have the information panel on the Red Alert. And this menu also, if you need more tools, such as the EMDR, NLP, EFT journaling, you can also invoke that menu by pressing this link. Remember the people in your life who are there to provide emotional support. They're named here. Leverage, have the courage to reach for support. If you need additional tools, we also have links to talk to Addy. We also have explicit links to I Want Dopamine. Okay, and at the end, just record the event. We have a history of when you experienced this overwhelming brain hunger. What were the people, the events, the situations that trigger this brain hunger? Continuing our discussion of the rewiring tool, the next function we're going to be discussing is interrupt overeating, which is the second icon on the rewiring tool. Specifically, this function is to be used when you've begun unconsciously overeating, mindlessly overeating, and you catch yourself and saying, oops, I'm overeating, I need to interrupt this behavior. This is a very important function, as it will happen. The current neurology is driving the overeating behavior. So the moment you recognize my physical body is not in need of this food, what I'm trying to experience is a squirt of dopamine, you interrupt that process. And you journal. You have several tools to leverage at this point, the journaling tool, or using this specific function to journal. It's important not to be harsh on yourself. It's important not to return to the cycle of shame. You have to celebrate that A, you recognize that you are not in need of this food, and B, that you have the physiological ability to stop that process, to end, and to invoke this function. So we are going to be celebrating that. If you're experiencing any sense of I'm backsliding, I failed, I feel helpless, then just be with that. Just be with that without returning to the cycle of shame. Leverage the breath. Continue to take slow, belly deep breaths. That activates the vagus nerve. And that is what returns us to parasympathetic mode as opposed to sympathetic mode. Recognize what it was that you wanted to feel with that food. Name that. Be with it. Recognize the fantasy of how you wanted to feel by that food and how you imagine you would feel after ingesting that food. Name what you need. Is it calling a friend? Is it self-soothing? Is it self-care? Is it self-nurturing? Is it dealing with emotions that in the past you were not willing to look at? Just be with that. This is an entry box to enter that information. And the last step, very critical last step, as we've discussed, the ability to experience progress, the ability to check this box and say, congratulations, you've made a meaningful progress in shifting from automatic unconscious responses to cognitive awareness. And pat yourself in the back for achieving that step. Very important function, the ability to interrupt the overeating once it starts. The next function that we're going to be discussing is mindful snacking. It's the third icon on the Rewiring tool menu. The time will come where we will experience genuine physical hunger, and yet our schedule or commitment interferes with that ability to have a mindful meal. When that occurs, this is the function that we're going to leverage, the mindful snacking function. It could be that you have to run to a meeting and you're physically hungry. It could be that you have a social commitment coming up in a couple hours, or a family dinner that is not going to occur for, let's say, 90 minutes. But currently, you have full awareness that your body needs nourishment. In that case, this is the function to utilize. It's called mindful snacking. And the first thing is to celebrate that we're going to change the behavior from eating 2 meals or rushing through a meal to actually eating mindfully. And what we're going to do is eat something to tie us over. Eat a mindful snack. Select something that we can enjoy that can tie us over, and we're going to journal about that. The mindful snack, if you have any question, a mindful snack is something under 300 calories, single serving, something healthy with a low dopamine quotient, nuts, fruits, salad, protein bars, something with absolutely zero food enhancers or extra sugar. So even a single serving of Haagen-Dazs is not a mindful snack. All it is feeding your dopamine. All that would be doing is providing you a dopamine hit. And there's an importance of having treats with our meals, but when you are physically hungry, eat something that's nourishing and that will tie you over until you have the time to eat a mindful meal or meet your social engagement and eat the meal with your friends. We're going to journal. The last entry is journal on that ability. Can you be grateful about this emerging ability? Can you appreciate and experience progress in this emerging ability? So this is when we record that. Okay, that is the function mindful snacking. Continuing to discuss the rewiring tools. Specifically, this menu has very specialized function beyond the rewiring tools to specifically address brain hunger. Like all menus, there is information about all these functions, and we're going to discuss now specifically stress proofing. Stress is a very tangible indicator that we are fully in sympathetic mode. Our body's generating additional cortisol that was meant to move very large muscles. The adrenaline cycle has been initiated. We are fully in sympathetic mode. When we are in sympathetic mode and have a history of compulsive responses to life, it's specifically if you're here is because your response is overeating food, then you're basically compromised. You are very likely to overeat. So it's critical for us to get out of that stress mode and train to lower that response, that high stressful feeling to life. Okay? The neurology that was meant to keep us safe, to fight or flight, has been fully activated when we are experiencing that level of stress, when we're experiencing very high stress. So we have to understand that the high stress fuels compulsive overeating. We just have to acknowledge that. And again, we're going to leverage the breath. We're going to leverage the breath to activate the vagus nerve, to move to parasympathetic responses. Next step, very important, write down very specifically what's stressing you out. We have a whole entry box at the end here. This will allow us to keep a record and to build the history of what's stressing us out. Okay, so I'm going to write that down. My commitment is to write that down. Are we willing to ask family, friend, and we have a list of our support group, to help us problem solve as to what's stressing us out, to identify options regarding this current stressor. Remember, problem solving is one of the critical life skills to overcome addictive behavior. If we just keep marinating into what's stressing us out and visualizing worst case scenario, then it is a car going down a steep hill. It is going to end in an overeating episode. If you experience chronic stress, and this is part of your job, this is part of your daily life, then it's critical to receive either professional or leverage the coaching that we provide as part of the Thin Woman's Brain program. Again, let me remind you, this is not just an app. The program includes the app, but it's way beyond that. Without the coaching, we're limited to what this piece of equipment is telling us. And the program is much more than that. Let me remind you that the cortisol was meant to move very large muscle, and that's why doing some exertion, something that burns all that cortisol out of our body, will also lower the stress level. And that's why anything, jumping jacks, anything that will allow the body to generate mild sweat will be very helpful into switching out of that stress level. Oxytocin is what calms the amygdala down also. So anything that generates oxytocin, that's why reaching out to friends and problem solving is so helpful. But petting a pet, meditating, all these things that generate oxytocin and help us lower our stress level would be helpful. Now, people have found that this last icon is reiterating what we have just said in the previous panels. So use the space below to describe exactly what's fueling your stress. Lack of time, overcommitment, worrying about not completing a deadline, financial issues, worrying about undesirable outcomes. If you really process this list, it's staying in the mind and visualizing worst case scenarios that is causing this stress. It's very rare in our modern lifestyle where we are experiencing a life-death situation. That was the intention of the sympathetic mode in getting us out of those situations. So what's going on and what's causing a lot of stress is the mental imagery, the mental visualization of something that it's undesirable for us. Again, there are the significant information in the information panel, and also in the help entries, there's additional information if you want more input about the stress-proof function. The last menu we're going to be discussing is the support menu. The support menu is reached by simply swiping until we get to it. This menu is primarily composed of different ways that you can request support or you gain additional information. Your previous notes, any information which you have previously entered into the app can be accessed through the first icon, which is previous notes. You can request personalized support. You can request tech support. Frequently asked questions are here. The group support is also here, in explicit access to the coaching calendar, which we discussed in multiple of the functions. We also have terms that are unique to this app. Perhaps not unique, but at least not previously encountered by most people. And in this section, we also have the icons that are used throughout the app. And this menu also contains the specifics about this specific version of the app. Also, very important information. When was the last time that the app was synced? What version of the app are you using? And under extraordinary circumstances, if you have to rebuild the data, which means that all the data that the device contains will be deleted. This is the area where that occurs. This also brings to mind the fact that if your data is backed up, you can always restore it from our central server. So this is yet another compelling reason why you should ensure that your app has been synced frequently. I would recommend at least every 2 days. So at most, you're losing 2 days worth of data. I mean, again, this is extraordinary circumstances under which that happens, but there's something called Murphy's Law. I'm sure you all are familiar with it. Again, this is the support menu, and you have a lot of information on how to receive help within this program. Hi, my name is Delia Suriel, and today we're going to be discussing the MiniGoals. The Thin Woman's Brain program has a variety of MiniGoals. These MiniGoals can be updated to reflect finding preferences, what's working for you in intervals of 4 days. Okay, so right now, my MiniGoals, I started the program, this specific test program on the 3rd, and my MiniGoals are being set until today. At any time, I can set those MiniGoals. Okay, so for example, let's say that I'm a meditator. I'm an experienced meditator, and instead of 5 minutes, I am actually up to 20 minutes of meditation without anxiety, without issues, and that I would like to do, instead of 10 mindful moments a day, I would like to do 15 mindful moments a day. Let's say that I am a dancer and I go dancing twice a week, so I can put in dancing in 60 minutes twice a week, for example. The belief system, the update of the belief system is very important. When we have belief systems that are not congruent with our goals, we find a way to sabotage. The human mind needs congruency. So the goals and the belief systems have to align. If there's a belief system that needs to change, it's very important that those two, the goals and the belief systems are aligned. If you need help with that, please join me during one of my coaching calls. Anyway, so I can set these MiniGoals and I can save them, and it will be changed every 4 days. That MiniGoals change, and I can update those MiniGoals.